For over a century, this was our image of the Neanderthals, primitive, brutish, dim-witted cavemen, the failed draft of humanity, a clumsy first attempt before the real show began. It's a powerful image, one that stuck with us for generations. But what if I told you it's almost entirely wrong? What if the real Neanderthals were not clumsy brutes, but something far more familiar? For over 300,000 years, another kind of human ruled Ice Age Europe. They were not our ancestors, they were our cousins, a parallel human lineage that thrived in some of the harshest environments Earth has ever known. And their disappearance, just as our own species arrived on the scene, is one of the greatest and most fascinating mysteries in the entire story of human evolution. So, let's start by throwing out the old cartoon caveman. The scientific evidence paints a very different picture. Far from being unintelligent, Neanderthals had brains that were, on average, slightly larger than our own. Now, brain size isn't everything, but it immediately tells us we're not dealing with a dim-witted species. This wasn't a biological dead end. This was a sophisticated and successful form of humanity, and we see that sophistication in what they left behind. They were expert toolmakers. The items they crafted, known as Mesopotamian technology, were not just crude rocks. They were precision instruments, beautifully worked spear points, sharp scrapers for processing hides, and specialized blades for butchering animals. With these tools, they were apex predators, skilled hunters of colossal prey like mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant cave bears. They didn't just stumble upon fire. They were the first known humans to truly master it, using it consistently for warmth, for cooking, and for protection against the great beasts of the Ice Age. But their intelligence wasn't just practical, it was emotional and social. We found skeletons of Neanderthals who lived for years with debilitating injuries, broken bones, blindness, amputated limbs. In the brutal world of the Ice Age, they couldn't have survived alone. This is powerful evidence that they cared for their sick and their elderly, that they had a sense of community and empathy. Even more profoundly, we see evidence that they deliberately buried their dead. At sites like Shinada Cave in modern-day Iraq, individuals were carefully laid to rest in graves, sometimes even with offerings like flowers. This act hints at something beyond mere instinct. It suggests complex social bonds, ritual, and maybe even the beginnings of a spiritual life, a sense of loss, a sense of self. Could they have gone even further? Some discoveries are tantalizingly suggestive. A cave bear bone found in Slovenia, with carefully drilled holes, looks remarkably like a primitive flute. Could the Neanderthals have filled their caves not just with the crackle of fire, but with the sound of music? Did they create art on cave walls or on their own bodies? The evidence is debated, but the possibilities are astounding. What is clear is that they were not brutes. They were a successful, intelligent, and resilient species of human who dominated a continent for hundreds of thousands of years. So, if they were so successful, what happened to them? The timeline is chilling. Around 45,000 years ago, a new type of human began to filter into their territory from the south. Taller, more slender, and armed with new ideas and technologies. They were our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens. And then, the Neanderthals vanished. Not overnight, but in the grand scheme of their 300,000-year reign, it was a blink of an eye. Within just a few thousand years of our arrival, their fires went out for the last time. They disappeared from the fossil record forever. So, what was the cause of this great disappearance? Was it a genocide, a climate catastrophe, or something else entirely? One of the leading theories is simple: brutal competition. While Neanderthals were brilliantly adapted to their environment, Homo sapiens may have had a few key advantages. Our ancestors had developed new kinds of projectile weapons, like the otlot or spear thrower, which allowed them to hunt more safely and effectively from a distance. We may have had more complex social networks, allowing for larger groups and wider trade, giving us a buffer during tough times. Some scientists even suggest that Homo sapiens had a slightly higher birth rate. It might not sound like much, but over thousands of years, even a 1% advantage in population growth could mean the difference between thriving and disappearing. We were essentially the invasive species, and the Neanderthals were the native population that got outcompeted for food, for territory, for survival itself. Another major suspect is climate change. The late Ice Age wasn't a stable, frozen period. It was punctuated by rapid, violent climate shifts, where temperatures could swing dramatically in just a few decades. These changes would have radically altered the landscape, the forests, and the animal populations that Neanderthals depended on. As highly specialized hunters of large, cold-adapted animals, they may have struggled to adapt when their primary food sources dwindled or moved. Perhaps our arrival was simply the final straw for a population already stressed to the breaking point by a world that was changing too fast. For decades, the debate raged between these theories, competition versus climate. But the most shocking answer to the mystery of their disappearance was unfound in a cave painting or a fossilized bone. It was found hiding in plain sight, encoded in the one place no one had thought to look: our own DNA. The development of ancient DNA sequencing in the 21st century was a revolution. For the first time, We could read the genetic code of beings who lived tens of thousands of years ago. And when scientists finally sequenced the Neanderthal genome, they discovered an incredible world-changing truth. Our ancestors and Neanderthals didn't just meet, they didn't just compete, they had children together. There were moments in the past where a Homo sapiens individual and a Neanderthal individual saw each other not as enemies, not as alien species, but as partners. This wasn't a rare one-off event. It happened multiple times, in multiple places, as modern humans migrated out of Africa and spread across the globe. As our ancestors moved into the Middle East and Europe, they encountered the established Neanderthal populations, and they interbred. The children of these unions were then absorbed into the larger, faster-growing Homo sapiens population. And here's the most amazing part. Those children carried that Neanderthal DNA with them, and their children carried it. And so on for thousands of generations, right down to the present day. As a result, if your ancestry is from anywhere outside of sub-Saharan Africa, you have Neanderthal DNA. Right now, it makes up between 1 to 2% of your entire genome. That DNA influences things like our immune system, our skin's reaction to sunlight, and even our susceptibility to certain diseases. It is a living inheritance from a lost world. So, in the end, the Neanderthals didn't completely vanish. Their species, their culture, their way of life, all came to an end. But they were not erased from history. They were absorbed into us. A part of them lives on today, a ghost in the genes of billions of humans. They are a silent, genetic testament to our closest, lost human cousins. A reminder that the story of humanity is far more complex and interconnected than we ever imagined. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into our deep past as fascinating as I did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories from the epic of human evolution. We'll see you in the next one.